Hi, HSTV here. Today I'm going to explain a horror movie called Outside. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens in the Philippines, where all the major cities have been overrun by mindless and bloodthirsty zombies. Our protagonist, Francis Abel, has somehow managed to escape Manila and head towards his home village along with his wife, Iris, and their two sons, Josh and Lucas. They soon reach an old, seemingly empty and abandoned house. Francis then grabs a piece of metal pipe and cautiously enters the house. As he slowly walks inside, he hears faint noises from upstairs and proceeds to check it out. He soon enters a room and finds a dead man lying on a bed. There is a gun near the old man's hand, which indicates that he took his own life. Francis takes the gun and wristwatch, then heads back outside. As he stands by the door, he sees an old woman who has recently transformed into a zombie. It is then revealed that the man inside the room is Francis' father, and the woman is his mother. The zombie mother eventually attacks, forcing him to shoot her. Following this horrendous welcome back home, Francis buries his parents in the cornfield. The Abel family then settles inside the house for the night. However, Francis cannot fall asleep and stays awake, keeping guard the entire time. In the morning, he checks the water supply and, after confirming it is clean, allows his sons to use it. But Iris doesn't seem happy that they are now stuck in this house. Sometime later, Francis takes his eldest son, Josh, with him to check another nearby house. There, they find a radio, a flashlight, and some chicken in a cage. They also find the owner's dead body, still hanging by the roof. Francis commands Josh to retrieve the keys that are dangling from the body's belt. But as the boy tries to tug the keys out, the dead body falls on him. Josh is clearly hurt in the incident, however. Francis doesn't help him at all. This is because he wants his son to learn how to handle difficult situations by himself. That afternoon, Iris takes Francis to the basement of the house so they can check for any supplies and tools that may be lying around. It is then revealed that Francis' abusive father used to regularly lock him in the basement as punishment. He is clearly not over that trauma, but proceeds to get into the room and discovers a generator that has run out of fuel. Later that night, during dinner, Iris suggests that they should head north, just a few miles from where they are, because she doesn't feel safe there. However, Francis insists that they should stay, as it is safer with no one else around. The following morning, the couple has a conversation near the cornfield that surrounds the house. It is revealed that Josh is not Francis' son, which is why he doesn't treat him as well as Lucas. Iris then reiterates that they need to head north, where the government instructed them to go. Francis doesn't seem all too happy with that idea, but eventually agrees for the sake of his family's safety. Soon afterwards, they leave in their van with Francis driving while Iris plans their route ahead. Everything seems to be going normally until Josh opens his mouth. He accidentally lets it slip that Iris had recently got a call from Francis' estranged brother, Diego. This news angers Francis so much that he loses focus and nearly crashes into a blockage on a bridge. The family then realizes that it's impossible for the van to drive forward, so Francis suggests going back to the house. However, Iris gets out of the van, armed with a blade, and tries to cut through the barricade. She makes too much noise, and soon, a soldier who had recently turned into a zombie appears from behind. Francis rushes to her aid and shoots the zombie with his gun. But while helping her up, more zombies appear behind their van and their sons are trapped inside. It appears that the kids are about to meet their doom, but the parents rise to the occasion. Francis bravely shoots at the zombies and lures them away from the van. Iris then manages to rescue their sons while her husband picks up a grenade from the dead soldier and tries to outrun the zombies. He lunges across the tops of cars and quickly makes some distance from the pursuing zombies. After making it safely behind a car, he throws the grenade, killing all the zombies. Francis then reunites with his family and they walk back to the house. 2 weeks later, Francis sneaks back to the bridge to fetch the van and realizes that it is in working condition. He is about to drive it to the house when he suddenly changes his mind. For some reason, he doesn't want his family to leave his ancestral house. Later, he arrives with fuel and lies to Iris that the van has broken down. He then puts the fuel in the generator and surprises his family with lights, air conditioning, and some music. The next morning, Francis goes to their chicken cage to get some eggs for breakfast. But he discovers a dog inside that has not only killed their chicken but also bites him on the hand. Iris later treats his wounds but suggests finding a hospital, as they don't have any medication for rabies. But once again, Francis declines to leave the safety of this house. Meanwhile, Josh hears something on the radio about a nearby camp, but he is unable to decipher the entire message. The kid then relays this information to his parents that night at dinner, and a heated discussion breaks out. Iris suggests that they should leave to find the camp. However, Francis insists on staying in the house, reminding her what they have encountered outside numerous times. Early next morning, Francis is repairing the chicken cage when Josh approaches him and asks to turn on the generator. Francis flatly denies his request, which leads to an argument between the two. Francis asks Josh if he can kill to save his family, the same way he did at the bridge. When the kid boldly replies that he can, Francis takes him to a nearby field to teach him how to use a gun. However, Iris hears the gunshots and approaches the field, only to see Francis tormenting Josh in the same manner his father tormented him when he was young. She is about to confront her husband when suddenly, several zombies arrive at the spot, presumably due to the loud sound of gunshots. The family then rushes back home with the zombies hot on their heels. They block the doors and run upstairs, but the horde of zombies manages to push inside through the door and the windows. Just as everything looks to be over for the Abel family, a jeep arrives outside the house and lures the zombies away. In the morning, Francis heads to a nearby river and discovers that the man who saved them is his brother, Diego. From their conversation, it is heavily implied that Josh is actually Diego's son. The two brothers discuss their pasts, during which Diego apologizes for everything and reveals that he came to help them. However, Francis is full of ego and declines all the help. He even pulls out his gun and points it at Diego. The latter wants no further confrontation with his brother and prepares to leave. But before he drives away, he leaves Francis the map to the northern camp. After Diego leaves, Francis takes the map and prepares to burn it, but changes his mind at the last second. He soon returns home and lies that Diego was already dead. By the time he got there, Francis then begins repairing the house and boarding up its windows. Later, while Lucas is playing, he chases a fly that eventually leads him to the basement. He then spots a zombie hiding behind a window outside the house. Iris also arrives there and notices that the zombies are getting weaker as the days pass. She realizes that these creatures will soon die out due to a lack of food and promises Lucas that everything will go back to normal. But unbeknownst to them, Francis is listening from behind the basement's door. That afternoon, while roaming around the farm, Francis finds a zombie in a similarly weakened state and kills it instantly. He then begins to fabricate a story, telling his family that there are several zombies still roaming around the farm. It is obvious that he wants to prevent his family from going outside. Later that night, while they are eating, Josh reveals that he saw a map in Francis's possession. It has directions to a camp towards the north where they can all be safe. Upon hearing this, Francis starts behaving extremely possessively and tries to convince Iris that they should grow their family on the farm. He even suggests that they should plan for another child. However, she refutes his point, pointing out that their life is no longer normal like it was before. Iris reminds him that he should focus on how they will survive as their food reserves are dwindling day by day. She suggests that she could venture out and gather food from the surrounding area. This suggestion is enough to ignite Francis' rage, and he begins spewing the marital problems that he and Iris have been having. He reveals to their sons that Iris was planning to leave them just before the zombie outbreak began. Iris admits this, stating that she is no longer happy with her life. She then asks him to hand over the map for the sake of their sons. But in response, Francis takes out the map and burns it immediately. Early next morning, Francis goes to the farm to search for food but finds only sugarcane. He grabs some of it when suddenly, he hears gunshots in the distance. It could only mean one thing: there are people nearby and they are fighting the zombies. That night, he brings a large piece of wood from the basement which he uses to block the door and then locks it with a chain. Iris and Josh are getting restless due to his increasingly controlling behavior. John then touches a sore nerve when he states that Francis is just doing the same thing his own father did to him. An enraged Francis hits the youngster, but before things can escalate, they hear a knock on the door. Soon, They can hear someone identifying himself as a soldier, desperately asking to be let in. Francis declines to help, but Josh removes the wood anyway. An injured soldier named Corcura then stumbles inside and begs for medical assistance. Iris, being a nurse, immediately rushes to help Corcura and asks about his injuries. The soldier reveals that he is from a nearby camp. Apparently, his convoy was on their way back from a supply run when a group of zombies attacked them. Everyone in his group died, leaving him as the only survivor, who managed to escape. He was nearly cornered by the zombies, but a man helped and directed him towards the house. Iris suspects that this mystery helper must have been Diego. Eventually, Francis agrees to help Corcura, but insists he must spend the night in the basement. A few hours later, when everyone is asleep, Josh tells Iris that he will leave to find Diego or the camp. He also admits to knowing about his true parentage, but says he considers Francis as his true father. The next morning, Francis finds Corcura having breakfast with Lucas, but notices that his elder son is not with them. He asks Iris about it, but she does not respond. An enraged Francis then rushes to look for Josh but finds his bedroom's door unlocked. Realizing that the kid has slipped out of his grasp, Francis flies into blind rage. He picks up his hammer, heads back to the kitchen, and smacks Corcura in the head. The others watch in horror as the soldier's brain is splattered all over the dining table. Francis then approaches Iris and knocks her unconscious with a vicious punch. When she wakes up, she quickly finds out that Francis has imprisoned her as well as Lucas in the basement. Meanwhile, Francis is slowly beginning to lose his sanity and starts devising sinister plans. He kills the dog that ate his chicken, cooks its meat, then heads to the basement, dressed in Corcura's military uniform. When his family refuses to eat the meat, Francis angrily smashes the plate on the floor. He then reveals that when he was young, his father would punish him if he didn't finish his food. Sometime later, Iris and her younger son hatch up a plan to escape from this godforsaken house. In the next scene, Francis suddenly wakes up from his nap to Lucas' screams. He quickly rushes to the basement, but as soon as he enters, Iris smacks him with a piece of furniture. He falls on the floor, temporarily knocked out, while Iris grabs the keys from him. The mother and son then finally escape the basement. Shortly afterwards, Francis comes back to his senses and tries to run after them. But he realizes that he is in the basement alone and begins seeing flashbacks of his father throwing him in here as a punishment. In the meantime, Iris grabs some items, including a blade, and runs outside with Lucas. They are about to leave the house when suddenly a zombified Diego attacks them. This prompts the duo to run back inside the house, but Diego grabs Iris by the leg. When the kid tries to help, Diego attacks him instead. It is at this precarious moment that Francis pops out of the basement to save his family. He manages to kill the zombie, but not before it bites Lucas on the hand. Now, they only have two options: either amputate the boy's arm or watch him transform into a zombie. An emotional Iris chooses the first option and starts preparing for the gut-wrenching process. Thankfully, Francis shakes some sense back into her and says they have to find another way. He tells her that they have to take the kid to the nearest medical center. For this, Francis rushes to the bridge where he had left their van a few days ago. Unfortunately, things come to an horrendous end at the bridge. Josh is strolling there with a gun that he picked from one of the soldier zombies' corpses. Francis also soon arrives there and immediately locates his van. However, since he is wearing a military uniform that is covered with blood, he appears like a zombie. Just as Francis approaches, Josh accidentally pulls the trigger out of fear and hits his father. When he finally realizes what he has done, he rushes to ask for forgiveness. Josh confesses that he has always seen Francis as his true father. The latter responds by extending his arm and saying he has always regarded Josh as his own son. Before Francis succumbs to his injuries, he is able to instruct Josh to take the van and rescue the others. The film comes to an end as Iris notices young Francis arriving at house with the van.